They say the gods of Africa walk with blood on their hands. But tell me, what happens when a goddess's jealousy becomes a curse carved into the lives of her people? In the shadows of forgotten shrines, whispers speak of a woman who was not just loved, but feared. Why is this goddess so feared, and what dark deeds are hidden in her story? Ledger keepers, stay with me. Across the vast lands of Africa, legends are not just stories, they are warnings. Ancient voices echo through the forests, rivers, and stones, reminding us that the gods were never just guardians of life, but masters of fear, desire, and vengeance. Their power was worshipped and dreaded in equal measure. And among these gods, there is one whose tale bleeds darker than most. A goddess who demanded not just devotion, but submission. A divine being whose beauty was said to ignite passion, yet her rage could turn entire villages into graves. To love her was dangerous. To defy her was fatal. Her followers tell of offerings made under the cover of night, blood spilled on sacred stones, cries of sacrifice hidden beneath the drums of celebration. And always the people wondered, was this devotion keeping her satisfied, or feeding something far more sinister? This was no gentle protector. This was a goddess who could twist joy into sorrow, love into torment, and loyalty into chains. And still, they bowed to her, terrified of what would happen if they didn't. Ledger keepers. Tonight we open her dark ledger, the story of a goddess whose wrath carves scars that never healed, and whose presence lingers still. Long before kingdoms rose and fell, before iron and gunpowder scarred the land, there was water. Deep, endless water, whispering with a serpent's tongue. From that water rose Idemili, not just a goddess of the river, but a keeper of wealth, fertility, in the unseen order of the earth. She did not walk among men often, but when she did, they bowed, for her eyes carried the stillness of death itself. Legends say her spirit is bound to the great river in Anambra, yet her reach stretches far beyond its currents. The python, her sacred offspring, slithered through villages unchallenged. For to harm it was to call Idemili's wrath upon your bloodline. Entire families were said to waste away after such defiance. Their names erased, their homes swallowed by strange floods no one could explain. But Idemili's myths were not only of punishment, she was also called the giver of wealth. Traders who offered her cola, palm wine, or blood at her shrines returned with overflowing markets and prosperous barns. Yet that wealth was never free. It carried a shadow, a debt that demanded payment, sometimes in coin, sometimes lots of living sacrifices, sometimes in the slow fading of a man's mind, until he became nothing but a hollow shell, staring into the water's edge. In whispered tales, Idemili herself appeared as a radiant woman, clothed in water, her waist wrapped with serpents that glowed like embers. To men who gazed too long, her beauty was danger. They followed her into the river and were never seen again. To women, she was both protector and rival, blessing their wombs with young ones, but cursing those who envied her with barrenness. Even the strongest warriors feared to swear falsely before her name. For when Idemili's anger was invoked, storms tore through villages, rivers overflowed, and thunder cracked like the sky itself was splitting. She was not just worshipped, she was feared, for her love and her hatred looked the same, endless, deep, and inescapable as the river itself. For all her gifts, Idemili was never a gentle goddess. Her mercy, it was a blade, sharp on both edges, and those who crossed her learned quickly that she never forgave. There is an old tale of a farmer who struck down a python that slithered too close to his yam barn. He thought himself safe until his offsprings began wasting away one by one. First fever, then madness, then the silence. By the season's end, his home was empty, his name forgotten. The villagers whispered that the python spirit had carried their souls back to the river as payment for the farmer's crime. Another story speaks of a wealthy trader. He made an offering at Idemili's shrine, begging for fortune, and for some time his barns overflowed. His wives wore coral beads. His household became the envy of every man alive. But when the goddess came to claim her debt, he refused. He mocked the shrine, said he owed nothing. That night a storm rose without warning. His goods were scattered, his offsprings drowned, and his name became a warning carved into the marketplace walls. Never bargain with Idemili. There were also tales of beauty that killed. Young men claimed to see her rise from the waters at night. A woman clothed in rippling silk, her waist wrapped in serpents. To look upon her was to be undone. They followed her voice into the dark water, certain they were chasing a bride. And not a single one returned. Their mothers poured libations at the river's edge, but only silence answered. Sometime, Idemili's punishments were not sudden, but slow. A woman who envied her blessings cursed the goddess in secret. Her womb closed, her crops failed, and for 20 years, her laughter never returned. When she died, the villagers buried her at the riverbank, hoping Idemili would finally take back what was owed. To call her cruel would be too simple. Idemili was balance itself. She gave and she took, she blessed and she cursed. Until this day, no shrine keeper dares test her patience, for the river waits, and when it stirs, it remembers. Most gods fade with time, their shrines crumble, their names are whispered only by historians and priests. But Idemili endures. Among the Igbo, her shadow still falls heavy across the land. Even today, pythons slither freely in certain villages, untouchable, protected, and feared. If one enters a home, it is not killed. It is given a place to rest, offered food, and guided back to the wild. For in its eyes, the people still see the goddess watching. Her shrines are still alive, tended quietly by priests who know the old ways. At night, sacrifices of palm wine and kola nuts are still poured at the riverbank. Not because people desire wealth, but because they fear what silence from her shrine might mean. Her fear is generational. Grandmothers tell the young ones never to harm the python. Fathers warn sons never to swear falsely in her name. Even those who claim not to believe avoid the river at night, for every ripple, every hiss of reeds in the wind feels like a whisper of her anger. Idemili's power has never faded because it was never based on worship alone. It was based on fear, and fear does not die. It passes from tongue to tongue, from one trembling heart to the next. Even now, in a world of concrete and machines, her river remains. Her python slithers, and her name still commands silence. Where other gods have become relics, Idemili remains a presence, eternal, watchful, and feared. Idemili is not a goddess you outgrow, not a tale you leave behind with childhood. She is the river you cannot dam, the silence you cannot break. To the Igbo, she is not myth. She is memory, living, watching, waiting. Her gifts came wrapped in curses. Her beauty carried death. Her python slithers still, a living omen that no machete dares touch. For she was never simply a goddess of water. She was the keeper of fear itself. This is why the eternal fear of Idemili survives when other gods have fallen silent. Because in every ripple of her river, in every hiss of the python in the grass, her voice remains. This is the hidden face of the gods of our land.